Alexander Grant was late for a board meeting, pulling his 6-year-old son Daniel through the city streets at a pace too fast for small legs. At 38, Alexander ran Grant Technologies with ruthless efficiency, every minute scheduled, every moment accounted for. Even this evening walk was strategic, quality time squeezed between conference calls. "Dad, slow down," Daniel protested, his little hand gripping his father's tightly. "We have 10 minutes to get back home, buddy. Nanny Sarah is waiting, and I have a call with Tokyo." The November evening was cold, shops closing for the night, streetlights casting long shadows. Alexander's mind was already on the meeting, on quarterly projections, on the merger he'd been negotiating for months. Then Daniel stopped walking. Alexander felt the tug on his hand, the sudden resistance. "Daniel, come on. We don't have time, Dad." Daniel's voice was strange, small, and shocked. "Dad, look." Alexander turned impatiently, ready to hurry his son along. Then he followed Daniel's gaze. A young woman sat on the wet pavement ahead, huddled against a closed storefront. She wore an oversized gray jacket, her blonde hair dirty and tangled, pulled back from a face marked by exhaustion and hardship. A worn stroller beside her held a teddy bear and what looked like her possessions. She wasn't actively begging, just sitting there, existing in the margin of other people's lives. "We need to go," Alexander said, tugging Daniel's hand. But Daniel had gone completely still, staring at the woman with an intensity that made Alexander uncomfortable. "Daniel, Dad," his son's voice shook. "That's Mom." The words hit Alexander like a physical blow. "What?" "Daniel." "No, your mother is, that's Mom," Daniel repeated, pulling away from his father's hand and walking toward the woman. Alexander's heart hammered. His wife Emma had died 4 years ago. Cancer. He grieved, moved on, built walls around that pain so he could function, could raise Daniel, could keep their lives running smoothly. This was impossible. But Daniel was walking toward the woman, and Alexander found himself following, his body moving before his mind caught up. "Excuse me," Daniel said softly. Standing in front of the woman, she looked up, and Alexander felt the world tilt beneath him. Emma. Older, thinner, marked by years of hardship he couldn't begin to understand, but unmistakably, impossibly Emma. His wife, Daniel's mother, the woman he'd buried 4 years ago. Emma? The name came out as a whisper. Her eyes met his, and he saw recognition, shame, fear, and something that looked like relief all at once. "Alexander." Her voice was hoarse from disuse. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Alexander's mind reeled. This wasn't possible. There had been a funeral, a grave. 4 years of grief and rebuilding. Daniel had already moved to her side, his small hand reaching for hers. "I knew it was you. I remembered your eyes." Emma started crying, pulling Daniel into an embrace that looked like it hurt her. "My baby, you got so big. What is happening?" Alexander's voice was sharp, years of controlled emotion cracking. "You died. There was a funeral. I buried you." Emma looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Can we go somewhere?" "Not here. I'll explain everything. I know you have no reason to trust me, but please, I owe you the truth." Alexander's instinct was to refuse, to protect Daniel from whatever nightmare this was. But his son was clinging to this woman, this ghost, with desperate recognition. "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away," Alexander heard himself say. "We'll talk there." The walk was surreal. Emma struggled to stand, clearly unwell, leaning on the stroller for support. Alexander took Daniel's hand again, his mind spinning. How was this possible? What kind of cruel trick was this? At the coffee shop, Alexander ordered food and coffee, while Emma sat with Daniel, who wouldn't let go of her hand. She looked at him like she was memorizing his face. Once they were seated in a back corner, Alexander forced his voice to remain steady. "Explain." "Now." Emma took a shaky breath. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe less. I was in so much pain, physically and emotionally. Watching you and Daniel, knowing I was leaving you, it destroyed me. So you just left, faked your death? I got approached by someone who specialized in helping terminally ill people disappear. They said it would be easier for you both if there was closure, if you could grieve and move on instead of watching me deteriorate. They faked medical records, arranged a cremation with someone else's remains. I went to a hospice facility under a different name to die. Alexander felt rage building. You let me bury a stranger. Let Daniel lose his mother when she was still alive. I know, it was selfish and wrong, but I was in pain and terrified, and they convinced me it was mercy. That quick closure was better than prolonged suffering. Then what happened? You clearly didn't die. Emma's laugh was bitter. The diagnosis was wrong. Partially wrong, anyway. I did have cancer, but it was treatable. By the time I realized, I'd already destroyed my life. I'd faked my death. I had no identity, no money, no way back. And I was too ashamed to tell you I was alive after what I'd put you through. So you've been homeless for 4 years? Not the whole time. At first, I was in the hospice under false identity, then a shelter. I tried to work under the table, but without documentation, options were limited. I got sick, lost what little I had. I've been on the streets for about 18 months. Daniel, who'd been listening with wide eyes, spoke up. Why didn't you come home? Emma looked at her son with devastating sadness. Because I was afraid your father would hate me, that you wouldn't remember me, that I'd destroyed any right to be in your lives. She turned to Alexander. I've watched you from a distance sometimes, seen Daniel growing up, seen you building this life without me. I convinced myself you were better off. Alexander felt torn between rage, grief, and something he didn't want to name. Relief. Maybe. The impossible return of someone he'd loved completely. This is insane, he said finally. You let me grieve you, let Daniel grow up without his mother, and now you're back, expecting what exactly? Nothing. I expect nothing. I just want you to know I'm sorry, that I made terrible choices, that I've thought about you both every single day. They sat in heavy silence. Daniel had moved closer to Emma, his small body against hers like he'd never let go. Despite everything, despite the betrayal and the lies, he was still just a little boy who'd gotten his mother back. Alexander made a decision that defied logic. You need medical attention, real attention, and documentation, and probably legal help to unravel this mess. Emma looked at him in shock. Alexander, you don't have to, you're Daniel's mother. Whether I understand your choices or forgive them, that's true. He needs you. Alexander's voice was firm. We'll figure this out, but you're going to get help, real help. Over the next weeks, Alexander arranged everything. Medical care that revealed Emma needed treatment she'd been unable to access. Legal help to restore her identity. Counseling for all of them to process the trauma. It wasn't forgiveness, not immediately. Alexander was furious, hurt, betrayed. They argued, cried, faced hard truths about fear and choice and consequence. But slowly, carefully, they rebuilt. Emma recovered her health in proper care. Daniel had his mother back, confused but joyful. Alexander learned that love didn't die with grief. It just transformed. 2 years later, they'd created something new. Not the life they'd had before, but something real built from honesty instead of fear. Emma worked as an advocate for homeless families, using her experience to help others. Alexander had learned that control couldn't prevent loss, but connection could survive it. I'm sorry I ran, Emma said one evening. I'm sorry I didn't see you were that scared, Alexander replied. Daniel, now 8, looked at both his parents. I'm glad I stopped walking, he said simply. The boy who'd recognized his mother when everyone else saw just another person on the street had saved them all. By remembering, by stopping, by refusing to accept that loss was permanent. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Comment below about a time recognition changed everything.